Chapter 9. The Law of Supply. The repetition of mantras is hypnotic and people set their own limitations by leaning on the power of affirmation. The moment we say, "I want a certain condition," we have barred the way to much good that we did not recognize and have opened but one avenue of expression. Unless the statement were in accord with the fullness of an expanding life, the realization might take on a form not anticipated. The very emphasis on want may aggravate the need instead of granting supply. The moment we put up a bar to the free flow of substance by a limiting statement, we hinder the perfect expression of God's abundance. What is the great expression that brings all things? I am abundance. This statement opens every avenue of expression and closes none. It recognizes the presence of God in all things and conscious unity of the self with the source of all good. You will find that this was the teaching of Jesus. It was abundance always, with no limitation whatever. I am knowledge. I am harmony. Use of these expressions will vitalize the energy in the body so that there results a new awareness of the abundance of knowledge and harmony. Nor is the energy depleted through free use in daily life. But if one has abundance, others must have it. As we assume that attitude, we shall come to know that if one does not have abundance, none can be prosperous. If we believe we are not prosperous, it is because we have isolated ourselves from this freely flowing abundance and built up the idol of lack. We have made believe we are just a part of the whole. But everyone is merged in the whole because there is completion only in that unity. If one were out, it would not be complete. The moment we realize our unity with the completed condition, we find that we express it outwardly. Worship of God with all our hearts and all our strength frees us from conditions of limitation. No one need be isolated. It is possible to realize that sense of union with God's abundance right now. The first determination must be an effort to get rid of the individual sense of limitation that we ourselves have built. There are several rather definite steps that must be taken to free the self from limitation. There is no situation that cannot be conquered. Happiness, prosperity, and abundance belong to all. The greatest bar is the lack of acceptance. When the rabble scoffed at Jesus, did he pay any attention? When he saw people searching for things they thought belonged to them, he told them to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He went on to explain that man is the Lord of all creation. He said, "Peace be still," and he taught his disciples to recognize that you are free. With that declaration they brought themselves from what was considered the lowly walks of life into their discipleship. When Jesus chose a disciple from among the fishermen, did he see him as a fisherman? No, he saw him as his disciple, a fisher of men. He said, "Follow me." He instructed them to follow the expressions that had brought him to where he was. All was done with the greatest humility because he made it plain that selfishness could not enter the kingdom of heaven. Perspective on the conditions throughout the earth today shows that seeming discord puts us in a position where we think that we are separate from our neighbor and only unrelated individuals in the great plan of existence. But no one body can be taken out of that plan and the plan continue to manifest. Every individual is just as necessary to its completion as the number of atoms to the molecule. When, through our expressions, we again show the unison of existence, we realize that we were never separate nor outside of a unity with the whole. Jesus taught in simple terms that the object of this life is not death but a greater expression of life. Everyone is a unit in the whole principle operating in harmony, where every individual stands in his own domain, completely in accord. For that reason you will find if you go through the simple teachings of Jesus that he put forth the declaration, "I am God," for every individual to use. That is not part of the principle but the principle itself. Religious doctrines have all too often emphasized theory instead of practice. Repetition of such an attitude limits our understanding of truth to the physical things and we lose the spiritual significance. When Jesus was asked regarding the answering of prayer, he said that the reason prayer was not answered was that the asking had been amiss. You will find that if you stand definitely with a positive declaration, you will not need to use words at all. The moment that you realize within yourself that abundance already exists for you, at that very instant the condition manifests for you. Then you do not need outside suggestion. You are in perfect harmony with principle. The instant you think of any condition, you are one with it. You will find that if you stand definitely with a situation, you will never need to repeat a petition. It is finished before you ask. Jesus said, "While they are asking, I have heard." Then he went right on and said, "Before it is spoken, it is already accomplished." Do we need to go on asking for a condition that is already accomplished? How many times can a condition be completed? Need we beg for something that is already ours? No. You can trace the lives of our greatest men and see how they accepted accomplishment. Deep in the subconscious, the way of accomplishment already existed. With freedom from any sense of limitation, they were able to express that which already existed. It is through complete lack of division that we stand as principle. How could we be in want if we put God in the place of want? Principle is harmonious and flows according to definite laws with which man must learn to work. Questions and answers. Question: You say we should never go back to the asking for anything we may want. Answer: That always implies doubt. If we go right on, we are above every doubt and fear. If it was not already accomplished, we would never think of it. Question: In other words, seek and know and draw a mental picture of the completion. Answer: Yes, absolutely. If we look to divine mind for the solution, we open every avenue. If we project ourselves, we close every avenue except ourselves. The self makes mistakes. The other never does. Question: Why can't we hold out our hands as the masters do and have them filled? Answer: Because we will not do it. It is just because we say we cannot see it. Put out your hands and give thanks. That is what Elijah did. It is being done today in millions of forms. Question: In what way have the masters helped you in your work? Answer: I can say that had it not been for their assistance, the work could not even have been started, let alone carried on. We have never had to go to any organization or individual outside of our own family group. Had it not been for their assistance, we would not have been able to carry on, even had we had the finances. We have gone on many times according to our own deductions, but, in every instance, we have had to come back to their conclusions, which are based upon the knowledge of chemistry and mechanical devices preserved from ancient civilizations. Chapter 10. The truth shall set you free. Jesus told us that the truth would make us free. When one stands in that free, flowing stream of universal power, nothing can touch him, let alone hinder or stop him. The Christ is God flowing through the individual. One standing in that attitude has everything to use, and all the principle flows through him. Why has this power become static, inactive, and non-responsive in so many of us? Only because of our own attitude toward it. Each individual's attitude of thought can completely check the utilization of it, even though it continues to flow in universal abundance. When one is aware of this power flowing through him, he can give conscious expression to it. When Jesus made the statement regarding his unity with the Father, he knew that all humanity could be as he was and is. The truth frees us from any negative condition in which we may be involved. We alone bring about those negative conditions, and we alone can free ourselves from them by changing our thoughts. Jesus knew the science of expressing that freedom. He knew that humanity would go on to greater and greater accomplishment as more individuals grasped the truth. We are just beginning to realize our possibilities. All through the scientific world, changes are coming about. Scientists are learning that if they will definitely work with principle, they will accomplish their research more effectively and quickly. That attitude is taking their work out of the guessing state. The debasement of God is death. There is no death except through the debasement of God. Jesus showed us the way to turn to God. Worship God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. In debasement we have worshipped outside conditions and made every idol possible and worshipped them. Man must bring forth God from within, in that way presenting God to the whole world. Many people have asked where we get our authority for our statements. You can find it for yourself by taking a Jewish Bible and a lexicon and making your own translation. You will find a complete story of millions of years of evolution in the first chapter of Genesis. We find that there have been great epochs of humanity. Through the distortion of the original teachings, humanity has been taught that it was outside of God's dispensation, living in a material condition through which it must work. But God never cast man outside of himself. Man himself has built the illusion of a mortal existence wherein God must be won by prayer and acceptance of religious formalities. Yet, no matter what attitude we take, we cannot alter perfection. It stands preeminent. It does not matter to principle into what form you build this body with your thoughts. You do not alter principle in any way by building what you think of as an imperfect body. We can entertain all the doubts we wish, but someday the truth will sink in. When we drop all our doubts, we are back in perfection where we belong. Jesus told us that we are our own saviors. How could a completed love forgive anything? How could a completed principle forgive anything? It is only that we forgive ourselves from this separation. This great race of today is right at the point of accepting the great order of the Christ in the individual. Can't we see that if we turn completely to the Christ principle, presenting the Christ-like attributes instead of destructive thoughts, we should become so aware of this great condition that we would change the nature of all humanity. We are face to face with it now. When we accept, we shall know it as we are known. This great period in which we are today is the completion of the cycle where the Christ stands forth again dominant. The Christ always stands as the conqueror. The entire Bible is a complete bringing forth of that condition, pointing right to this time, with the Christ coming forth, meaning that every one of us presents the Christ. The moment we accept, this body becomes a light body. Then we begin to use the power of which we have been unaware for so long. We have now passed through the so-called golden age of the natural philosopher, which reached its climax about 150 years ago. We are now fully aware of the wonders of nature and its projected perfect divine plan, and that divinity is within every unit of all humanity. Also in every tree, every plant, every flower, as well as all vegetable life. While the minerals have life, they were formerly under an entirely different sphere of existing influence. As all of humanity learn to use and bring into active control all of their mind faculties, they will find that there is within the mind every ability to control and fully create and bring into existence every atom and every planet. All substance then creates all substances into being. This factor is the supreme intelligence or God intelligence, which moves upon and through all things and is the creator of all things. Man has stood in this Godhead for eternity, the actual ruler and creator of all things, but as one begins to deviate from this great and noble plan, then that thought may create a bug, a worm, or a vicious thing to move about and torment humanity and even destroy himself or a portion of humanity. But even if millions do use thoughts adversely, those thoughts will in no way affect the entire plan. They may apparently affect a seeming large portion of humanity, yet the full God balance hold all in complete accord and unfailingly to the original plan, so that no atom is misplaced. Then is it difficult to conceive how all come from the one cell as that point of infinite intelligence of humanity, that infinite divinity, rules all supreme over all and through all things. This infinite intelligence was ruling long before the universe began to appear as being. Then let us worship that great intelligence as the one and only cause, and ourselves as that very thing, as this will eventually bring us into a clear understanding of it as well as of all things. Unless we cling tenaciously to this and accept it as absolute truth or fact, we will always miss the salient point of our complete existence. It is through the selectivity of the divine emanating principle that the Christ is born. It is the creation of the whole human race, the true Christ in every form. This is the immaculate, the true conception that Mary foresaw, and the total conception of every child born. The true Christ is perpetuated throughout all humanity. Thus all humanity is eternal and immortal, the true God being. Look at the wonders of creation and birth. Go back 800 million years, if you wish, and you will find this God principle, the Christ in each and every individual, dominant among all humanity. Trace on down to the present and you will find it just as commanding, just as dominant, also just as justifiable as it was at that age. It matters not how it has been covered by man's ignorant, negative or mortal thinking. The moment one glimpses this all-sustained and sustaining truth, the entire thought current is open to it beneficial influence. It is that very influence that has placed and sustained the heavy layer of oxygen just far enough above this earth that it is a protecting shield that filter out the life-giving rays from the sun and lets just enough come through to maintain life upon this planet. Just as soon as humanity sees this great beneficent action and what it means to each and every individual, then will the Christ principle again sweep through all humanity, and they will see the one supreme God intelligent principle that governs justly, wisely, and completely. There will be no more of the setting up of false gods or graven images. This complete truth or unity of purpose is never deviated from by storm or condition of emotion. It just stands steadfast above the storm. This great calm is in no wise affected for, again as we open our thought to its influence and just let it flow through our entire being, our thoughts are so saturated by its deifying influence that we soon find our mind is really at home again and we are one and the only instrument that has completely transcended time and space. We have arrived again in the beautiful garden of God intelligent principle, at home right here on earth where the beauties of all heaven really do and always have existed. The wonderful paradise of God within every human form. Go directly within yourself to find God, the supreme intelligence. When you do this wholeheartedly and know that God is really you, the entire being of you, you will find every answer and you will be ever permanent, stable and all-knowing. There you will find that you are right at home, also you will find that you are all things, know all things, and capable of giving out all things and that you are all truth. It is well to know that every individual is the same as you and to give them the same privileges that you have. As you carry this to success and know that you have mastered all obstacles, you can go where you will, do as you will, and speak God forth into all things and there will be no limitations in your thoughts for others. The only time it takes to make these transitions is the time that you allow an instant and it is accomplished. Just rejoice in God, your very self, and free every limitation. Also recall that one instant is all eternity. I thank you God for life and light abundant, full and free, for perfect abundance, wealth and power and unhampered liberty. In using this prayer, always think and keep your thoughts on your full and complete body temple and know that this body form that you see is God. When you are looking at your body you are looking at the complete and perfect God temple. Your body is the very first temple that was ever brought forth into form. Therefore, it is the first and purest temple where God could dwell. Then why not love and worship this perfect God temple? For, by loving and worshipping it as a God temple, perfect and complete, we must be absolutely aware of this body as the God temple complete, for loving, thinking, and accepting is true worship. There never was a temple like this temple of the living God. Every temple built by hands can in no way compare with this body temple. They are pictures and forms that the mind has thought out, conceived and built or brought into form. Yet they fall far short of even bringing forth one function of the beautiful body temple. There is not a laboratory in all the world capable of doing what this body laboratory does without taking any thought of the process, taking in food and transmuting it into life or bringing forth a living form that is perpetuating a race, or even flexing a muscle, let alone thinking, acting, moving, talking, and perceiving that which is the present, past or the future, the ability to construct, build, also to go forth and teach and endow accomplishments, to assist posterity, to give forth that which is good and noble, honorable, and magnificent. Then think, is there a temple aside from this body temple that can give forth all of these virtues, unless they are endowed with them by this great glorious body temple, the first and only temple not made by human hands? Is it any wonder that God chose to abide and be at home within this glorious body form, this form divine, this God temple body that completely renews itself? Then let us cast about and see how and why this body has been so degraded. We have been taught by sacrilegious, deceitful, ignorant, profit-seeking individuals with but a smattering of the real truth, that this body is weak, sinful, imperfect, inferior, abnormal, subject to disease, decay and death, that it is conceived in iniquity and born in sin and every other thought and expression that a moral man can conjure up. First let us think and look into the past and see and understand just where and how these teachings, thoughts, and words have gradually drawn us into the terrible vortex and miasma of sin, duplicity, sickness, failure, and last, the greatest dishonor of all, death. Let us view with a clear vision the results of this dishonest perfidy and see to what extent it has led us into the dishonor of this perfect God body form. Then from that moment on let us truly forgive, thus, forget, and let it pass from our lives, our thoughts, our actions, and our whole experience. Again, let us keep forgiving and forgetting it until every vestige of the experience is completely erased from our subconscious thoughts. It is within the subconscious thought process that it has, by repetition, been engraved as in a photograph, through vibratory influence, until it repeats to us these records over and over, again and again, until we believe they are true. The photograph of yourself or any friend or individual is but the record of the vibration of that body form. It is in this way that the thought forms or the forms of the spoken word in vibration are recorded in the subconscious and it has the ability to repeat to you. Then let us think just for a moment how we have trained ourselves to accept and believe and worship these degrading untruths. Then let us think or suppose, just for a moment, that we had never heard or been taught these words of untruth and that they had never been lodged into our vocabulary. We would never have known them, accepted or learned or believed or worshipped them. If we are capable of learning them and believing them, we are far more capable of unlearning them by demanding that they leave every time they come up or are repeated to us from the subconscious. Just say to them, "You are completely forgiven, so leave me entirely alone." Then say to your subconscious, "Just erase all of those and accept no record, only the truth as I set forth." How can you express youth, beauty, purity, divinity, perfection, and abundance until you see, feel, hear, and know them and put them forth in thought, word, action, and expression? Yes, by worshipping them. By so doing you impress them on or into your subconscious thought, and this subconscious thought reflects these thoughts back to you from the pictures you have presented to it, through the vibration that you have established or set up there. You will soon find that it is no more trouble for the subconscious thought to repeat the truth that you are sending forth to it than it is to repeat the former untruths that you have previously imposed upon it. The more you impress the truth upon the subconscious by love and worship, the more it will send it back to you. This is where you are the master. For, by forgiving the untruths and letting go of them, you will find that you have mastered them. You are above and beyond them, they are forgiven and forgotten. You will find by talking to your body, the subconscious of you, and knowing that what you are saying is the absolute truth, it outpictures. For, if this that you are telling your body is not the truth, you would not have a body, you would in no way be able to think, act, move, speak, feel, see, hear, breathe, or live. Then the greatest privilege in the world is to know that all are the same and have the same power that you have. That they, as well as you, have the same powers, and that they, as well as you, have never lost that power. They, as well as you, may have perverted their thoughts about that power, but those perverted thoughts have never in any way changed or diminished that power. For, when we change to true thoughts, words and actions, we find that power flows through our body and we readily feel the glory of its response. Yours is the power to do this completely. You have given limitation dominion over your thoughts. Simply break that shell that you have allowed yourself to be encased in and you are freedom itself. Know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Questions and answers. Question: Is it true that you were in India in person and experienced those things in the body as recorded in the books which you wrote? Answer: We have never, in any way, been able to travel in the astral condition and have used no method outside of the physical method we know today. They were actual physical experiences. Question: If you knew that Jesus could be contacted anywhere, why did you go to India to unearth these truths? Answer: We did not go there for that purpose. Question: Have you personally ever transported your physical or astral body? Answer: I know nothing about the astral body. We have had our physical bodies transported many times. We have never been able to determine how it came about, but the very fact that it was brought about is proof that it can be accomplished again. It is only a matter of going about it in the right way. Question: Does the lack of forgiveness limit the power of our love? Answer: There is no limit to love or forgiveness or principle. We can use them in every direction for every condition. Just let go of the condition and revert back to the principle. The moment we have forgiven, we are right back to principle. Chapter 11. Men who walked with the Master. I think many of you have planted seeds or set out plants and loved them and watched them grow. Plants will respond very readily. Luther Burbank never sent out plant from his garden unless it responded to his voice. George Washington Carver did the same thing. I worked with George Washington Carver and I knew Luther Burbank from the time he was 6 years old. Luther Burbank always said, and it disturbed his mother and father very much because they did not understand it, that Jesus worked with him all the time. One Sunday afternoon he walked with his father over to visit a neighbor. They took a short cut through the fields and passed through a potato patch. As children will do, little Luther Burbank ran ahead. It was at the time when the potato blooms were ripening. One stem was standing up a little higher than all the others and Luther stopped to look at it, and his father said when he came up that the flower was waving back and forth, and the boy said to him, "Papa, that's talking to me." Well, the father told my father. I thought the boy was going wrong and I hurried him on and went over to the neighbors. All the time they were there Luther was anxious to return, and finally, about 3:30 they started homeward. They returned through the same potato field, the boy rushing ahead and going directly to this same plant. There was a great calm over the field, not a leaf moved. When the father came up to where the boy was standing, that tall seed pod was moving again, back and forth, and Luther said, "Papa, I want to stay here. Jesus is talking to me and telling me what to do." His father took him home and made him do his chores and sent him to bed. In a short time he found him stealing downstairs trying to get out of the house. He was sent back to bed 3 different times that night. By that time it was 11 o'clock and the parents thought the boy was asleep for the night. The next morning Luther was missing. The father walked out into the field and there he found the boy wrapped around that potato hill just as close as he could get to it, sound asleep. When he was awakened he said, "Papa, Jesus talked with me all night long and he told me that if I would watch that little bulb until it ripened, take it and preserve it and plant the seed the next spring, that when it developed there would be one potato there that would make me famous, and that is just what happened." Luther Burbank also worked with the cactus. He took the prickly pear and put it into a glass cage where it would be protected. For 5.5 months he sat before that case 1 hour each day and talked to that prickly pear something like this: "Now you are protected, you don't need those spikes, let them go." In 7.5 months the spikes had dropped off. He had the spikeless cactus. Luther Burbank used to say, "Why, I walk and talk with Jesus, and he with me. He teaches me. He tells me what to do." F. L. Rawson was a brother to Sir Rawson, one of the great engineers of England. He was called in by the Daily Mail to investigate Christian Science and he did such a remarkable work that they were all astonished. His first statement was, "There is nothing but God in God's perfect world. Man is the image, the likeness, passing on God's ideas to his fellow man with perfect regularity and ease." One day when I was visiting Mr. Rawson in London we stood at a window looking out across the street. In London years ago they used 2-wheel carts drawn by 1 horse. Construction work was in progress across the way and a horse pulling a 2-wheeled cart came down the street, halted, backed up, the driver went to the back of the cart, and suddenly, before the eye could catch what happened, the box turned up and tipped the whole load of rock right on him. F. L. Rawson's statement was, "There's nothing but God," and that man seemed to come right up through the rocks, and he didn't have a scratch on him. Another thing happened in that same connection. The horse didn't do something that suited him and the owner started to beat the horse. All Mr. Rawson did was to tap on the window to attract the man's attention. The horse immediately walked over and put his nose up against the window. F. L. Rawson took 100 men into World War I and came out without a scratch on any of them, and they went through some of the most rugged assignments. He stood absolutely for that statement, "There is nothing but God." We can go on and state almost indefinitely what happens as we take the right attitude toward a thing. Now we know that, if we stand off and look at a thing and say that is impossible, the very next thing you know somebody else will come along and complete that in a short time. That has been so with practically everything. Alexander Graham Bell was a good example. Our family knew him very well. He lived in Jamestown, New York. He walked 60 miles from Jamestown to Buffalo, New York to contact my father and his 2 brothers, who were bankers in Buffalo at the time, and asked them to let him have $2,000 that he might attend Boston Tech to perfect his instrument and install it in the Centennial Grounds in Philadelphia in 1876. They let him have the money. When the directors of the bank learned of the loan they came to my father and uncles and asked for their resignation. They were so sure Bell would never perfect his telephone. Booths were installed at the Centennial, people could pay a nickel, go into those booths and call up and talk to their friends in another booth, and that little device created such interest that it paid more money than anything else that was installed at the Centennial Exposition. You see, we close our thoughts and we lose the benefit of them. Alexander Graham Bell was really a wonderful character. The reason he didn't have any money was because he was always helping the blind. He spent every bit of his money he had to aid the blind. Dr. Norwood used to tell his little congregation that he would go for a walk out among the timber in back of the church and there Jesus would join him and they would walk on and on together. Dr. Norwood had a small church up in Nova Scotia at a little place where there were only 29 fishermen and their families in the village. Somehow, word of this got out and we heard of it and went up there with the idea of taking photographs. We took the pictures on a Bell & Howard camera with the ordinary lens, and we have those pictures today. Some time later Dr. Norwood was called to St. Bartholomew's Church in New York City, and in less than 5 months that church was so crowded that they had to put loudspeakers outside that all who came might hear him. One Christmas season during a healing service hour at the church, Jesus was seen to walk out from behind the altar and pass right down the main aisle of the church. I talked to over 500 people who were gathered there and saw this happen, and Jesus' salutation was, "Prepare to put love forth to the whole universe." The Chelas in India have a very beautiful prayer which you will note is not a beseeching prayer. I go forth this day in all things immersed wholly in God and God's abundance. The conquering Christ stands forth one with God's abundance and in every activity of this day. Now I know that I am God's supreme child. I move each moment of this day immersed in God and God's divine love. God, God, God. The great flame of love flows through every atom of my whole being. I am the pure golden flame of God. I pour this divine flame through my physical body. The conquering Christ salutes you, God, my Father, peace. Peace, peace. The great peace of God prevails. Chapter 12. Credo. The goal is God. You can start your day with God by taking your first thought of God within your own form. Let me say that the goal is established and always has been established. You are divine. The divine image, God, the Christ of God. God men, God women. Let me also state that there is no thing or no one to compel you to think of these things. It must be a free will offering to your God self. God, I am united with universal life and power, and all of this strength is focused in my entire nature, making me so positive with God perfect energy that I send it out to every form, and I make it so positive that all may be transformed into harmony and perfection. I know that they are all in accord with infinite life and God, freedom and peace. My mind is fully polarized with infinite intelligent wisdom. Every faculty of my entire body finds free expression through my mind, and all humanity does express the same. My heart is filled to overflowing with peace, love, and joy of the conquering Christ. I see in every face that conquering Christ. My heart is strong with God love, and I know that it fills the heart of all humanity. God life fully enriches my entire bloodstream and fill my body with the purity of divine life. God is all life. I am inspired with life with every breath, and my lungs take in life with every breath, and it fills my bloodstream with vitalizing life. God, my stomach is the digestive energy of intelligent and almighty life. Every organ of my body is infused with health and harmony, and my entire organism works in complete harmony. I know that all of my organs are infused with God intelligence. All are conscious of their duties, and they work together for the health and harmony of my entire being. God, I am the energy that fills all space. I am constantly drawing in this energy from all-pervading God life. I know that God is that all-wise and loving intelligence imparting to me the mighty God life, and I realize the full dominion from God, the indwelling presence in my complete body form. I praise God within for the healing perfection of life. All is life, and I allow all life to come into expression. The conquering Christ says, "My words are spirit and they are life." And, "If a man keep my words, he will never see death." The intelligent Christ, the conquering Christ, sends forth abundance of love to the entire universe. Supreme mind is everything. I am supreme mind. I am supreme wisdom, love, and power. From the very depth of my heart I shout the glad thanksgiving that I am this sublime and exhaustless wisdom, and I demand that I draw it to myself and become completely conscious of this ceaseless wisdom. Remember that thoughts and spoken words are things. Shout the glad tidings of joy that you are free, completely free from all limiting conditions. Then know that you are free and go forth triumphantly free. I am reborn into the perfect power of the supreme mind of God. God, I am. Let us walk among all people with the full realization that we exist to impart the joyous light of love to every soul. This is in reality the greatest privilege. For as we radiate that boundless love of God to every soul, our souls thrill with the Holy Spirit. We also feel the love of God for all humanity. To feel and know this is to feel and know the conquering Christ in all humanity. This endows us with the healing power and wisdom that Jesus is endowed with. From the editor, during his lectures the last 2 years of his life, Baird Spalding often recited the words of a poem written by John Gillespie Magee Jr., a Royal Canadian Air Force pilot who was shot down over England on December 11, 1941, at the age of 19. Shortly before his death, John Magee sent his mother the poem, High Flight, which was soon to become known the world over and is still considered the greatest poem to come out of World War II. Because it was his favorite verse, we feel Mr. Spalding would like the words of High Flight included in this volume. Editor. High Flight. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed, and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along, and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark, or even eagle flew, and, while with silent, lifting mind I've trod the high, untresses sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. I thank Lynn Avery, Christy Gray for taking the time and love to type this volume for me. I have proofed it, Pamela Parnell.